The scientific selling secret that I learned the day my dad had open heart surgery. I'm Dr. Dan, I'm a neurostrategist, I'm a coach. I help my clients sell and scale their business's revenue using brain-based strategies. So in this video, I want to break down how I transformed my mediocre service-based business into a $1 million cash cow, making one simple scientific change. And here's the deal, you're gonna hear me talk about scientific, neuroscience, brain-based. What that means is I will teach you a reproducible model. This is exactly what I teach my clients. You don't have to be some sort of charismatic guru,
a rich, powerful ball of charisma,
to implement this with massive results. So when it comes to selling and communication and persuasion, all the gurus out there are gonna tell you use this or that model, that script, that plan. What I'm here to say is all of them use this tactic that I'm about to tell you, but they don't talk about it. And the reason they don't talk about it is because it's hard to coach. This is something that is so customized. If they taught this, then they would have to give a script. And if they gave a script, it would be weird because it would be their version, not your version. And so this goes overlooked by almost every communication strategist out there. It blows my mind. Hardly anyone is talking about this. But when you break down how the brain makes decisions, you could quickly see how this one specific and significant change can literally transform an entire business, and for that matter, the entire world. Research actually shows, and I'm gonna go through some of it with you, that this one big change that you can do right now will do 4 big things. It will allow you to charge more. The value of your product, service, and offer increases when you implement this. And that happened with me. It will help you overcome the objections as to why somebody would say no, and do it so powerfully, which is making it their own idea. It will increase the follow through or somebody retaining in a business model, and it will drive in more referrals without you ever having to ask. In my journey, this dates back to my 3rd year in business. My dad had a heart attack and he was going in for open heart surgery. I lived 2 hours from my parents' hometown, so I got up at 4 a.m, drove to the hospital my dad was in before he was carted down for the open heart surgery. I remember seeing him off and staying in the waiting room with my family for the news that would eventually come. And my dad did make it through the surgery, but at noon that day I had to make my way back to my office. And that afternoon something happened that I could have never created by myself without this event, but I also would have never known how powerful it actually was unless I was put in a position like this. That night in my health practice, I had a big report of findings, which means people were coming in to hear what was wrong with them and then decide if they were gonna start in my practice or not. There were 10 people in my report that night. I did a group report of findings. And as you can imagine, I was in just a little bit different headspace that night. My mindset was different. I truthfully did not care what they thought of me or my office. I let it rip. For the first time, I told them why I'm really here. I told them my journey, being raised in the family that I was, the upbringing that I had, that I was just like them, but I discovered something. And when I discovered something, it took a pain for me to realize that I was misled for a part of my life. Not intentionally, but unintentionally, I was misled because I was not aware of philosophies, practices, and strategies that I could have utilized growing up. And what happened is I positioned myself to be in their shoes. And they felt my message, they didn't just hear my message. Because what I was able to communicate for the very first time in my career up until that point was that I'm just like them, but I have something that transformed my life, and it ultimately is gonna transform their life. There's a reason why they hadn't heard it yet, and what they were about to experience would change their life forever. I told them what I really felt, what I really believed, and what I really experienced. And so you may be sitting there saying, I can't believe you haven't said that before. I don't know. I just didn't think my story mattered. I didn't think they want to hear about me. I tried to be like my mentors, my coaches. I just tried to sound like them because I didn't think that my voice was powerful enough for them to follow me and only me. But that night I just didn't care. there. I probably couldn't even tell you exactly what I said. I was in that state where you have to do this now. This has been my journey. This is why I'm passionate. This is why I'm committed. This is what we're gonna do. And something crazy happened. 90% of the people in my report converted. I got 12 referrals within the next 3 days, and that week alone, I collected $30,000, when my highest week up to that point was $8,500. But the magical part was that I realized my voice and my story mattered. And from that time on, my entire business changed. So if I break that down as a neurostrategist, I can prove to you why that worked, why it made a difference. Because every human makes decisions based on emotion. When you break open the brain, the parts of the brain that make decisions are all emotional. It's the limbic centers of the brain. When you tell your story, you tell it with passion and boldness, and these mirror neurons that they're hearing it with are triggered at levels that no words, facts, data, or research could ever influence. So there was a study in 2010 that showed when somebody hears a story, their brain receives it in the same area of the brain as if they're experiencing it. This is why communicating with story overcomes the toughest objections without you having to address the objection. This is why communicating with story has been shown to increase the value of your offer by 30 times. Another study out of Princeton showed that people remember your message 22 times more when it's wrapped in a story. That is what will drive more referrals without you ever having to ask for any. So from that time forward, I always incorporated my story, with the exception of a couple times. And I remember vividly a time when I left my story out. It was an individual, she was a cop. Bad boys, what you gonna do? And I can remember it as if it was yesterday. When I was going through finances with her, I felt like I was cheapening my solutions because I didn't give her a perspective with my story that would allow her to have a reference point of its true value. And what's crazy is, I didn't want to admit that to anybody. I would never tell that to a coach or a mentor or a colleague, because I felt like if I told them, it's like I'm hosting story time.
Story time.
Think about how that would sound if somebody said, well, every time I don't tell a story with my sales pitch, I feel like I'm cheapening my offer. That sounds weird. But see, that was before I knew the science behind the power of story. And so that one study that I just referenced, that they showed that when they added one thing to the messaging, one story, it increased the value that people were willing to pay by 30 times. And so if you want to raise your prices, if you want to collect more with the same amount of prospects and leads coming in, you got to do this one thing. You must add the power of story. And there's 3 things that I'll just briefly hit on. When you're actually adding story, you must elicit specific hormones, dopamine, cortisol, and oxytocin. The way you do that is you have to pique curiosity, you have to have a conflict, and you have to build a connection through this power of story that will increase dopamine, the curiosity hormone, cortisol, the stress and attention hormone, and then oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. If you can increase oxytocin, it is the ultimate bonding hormone that positions you and your offer in a league of its own, different from everybody else, and in a way they'll be telling everybody about it. And so you can tell I geek out on this.
Nerd alert!
Because when you put the power of story in your communication, I'm telling you right now, if you did one thing to your business this year, it would be this. Start to create the stories that allow your conversions and your revenue to take off without needing any additional prospects or new leads into your business. Now, ironically, it will also drive more leads and prospects in, but I'm telling you, revenue matters, conversion matters. And when I look back, I would have never known. I would have probably even debated somebody who told me that I need to use the power of my story in my communication. But that trauma to triumph is exactly what I needed for my mediocre, decent sized business to blow up to $1 million business, all because of the state that I was in when my dad had that open heart surgery. And now listen, if you need any help with this is exactly what I do all day, every day for my clients. I am known by some as a story genius only because I get fired up about helping anyone, even the beginners in business, to crush their communication, conversions, and collections by making this one simple change. So there you have it, from my studio into your business. If you need help with this, comment below, click one of the links. We'll see you in the next one. Dr. Dan, I'm out.